Hey friends, welcome back to the Lifestyle School podcast. I'm your host, Hope, and today we're diving into one of the most buzzed about topics in the health and weight loss industry right now, and that is GLP-1 medications like Ozempic and Wegovy. So, if you're wondering how they actually work, what they do to your metabolism, and whether they're a miracle or a mess waiting to happen, you're in the right place. This episode is not anti-GLP-1. I want to be clear. In fact, I believe these medications can be helpful as a tool, but, and this is a very big but, they are not a magic pill. And if they're not paired with lifestyle interventions that support metabolic health, the long-term consequences can be very serious. So let's talk about how to use them wisely if that is something you choose to do, and maybe some alternatives. Now, before we get into it, again, a quick disclaimer, I am not a medical doctor. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor before making any major changes to your dietary or your diet or your lifestyle, as well as any medications. Do not take this as medical advice, okay? So let's get into it. GLP-1 stands for glucagon like peptide 1, and it's a hormone your body actually naturally makes in your gut. I think a lot of people don't know that, but your gut does produce this peptide, and its job is to help regulate blood sugar and appetite. GLP-1 medication like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro are synthetic versions that mimic this hormone, and they work in four main ways. They slow your stomach emptying, and what this is going to do is it helps you feel full longer after eating. It can significantly reduce portion sizes without feeling like you're starving. They can increase insulin release. You might be like, hold on, what? But only when your blood sugar is high, which can be a good thing. And that means you avoid crashes of your blood sugar, and it can help you maintain more stable energy. So that's why a lot of times you'll see people with type 2 diabetes put on a GLP-1. They reduce glucagon, which is a hormone that usually tells your liver to release sugar. And the less glucagon you have, the less blood sugar will be dumped into your system. And they directly signal the brain to reduce hunger and cravings, especially for highly processed foods and sugar. Although I want to put an asterisk on that. There's been some articles coming out recently about how the food industry is finding a way around this specific effect of GLP-1 drugs to make foods still addictive to someone who is on a GLP-1. So that may or may not be the case. Food scientists are working feverishly, I'm sure, to make that not the case. Excuse me, I needed a sip of water. So, yes, GLP-1s absolutely work. People lose weight. I'm sure you've noticed everyone getting skinny in Hollywood. Blood sugar can improve. In some people, it really does make a difference. But we have to ask at what cost and for how long, right? These are really important questions to ask. So, here's something that most people don't know. When you take a GLP-1 drug, your body may start making less of its own GLP-1 over time. So that's a natural hormonal feedback loop. If your body senses you have plenty, it turns down production, right? And, that's not a problem while you're on the medication, but you got to ask what happens when you stop the medication, right? Do you plan on taking this medication for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years until you die? Your natural production is still suppressed when you stop taking the medication, and you may experience a rebound in hunger, in cravings, and ultimately weight gain. And this is why so many people gain the weight back when they come off GLP-1s, unless they've built strong lifestyle habits underneath. And One thing that I think needs to be talked about more, I think everyone who goes on a GLP-1 needs to have a serious conversation with their healthcare provider. But um, this is one of the most underreported risks, and that is muscle and bone loss. So, GLP-1 medications reduce appetite so much that people often don't actually eat enough food. And, obviously the type of food you're choosing to eat is really important as well. So if you eat a small amount of food, that's a small amount of raw material that your body has to go put to work maintaining muscle, building your cells, preserving your cells. And if that food is of poor quality, if it's, fast food, junk food, um, that causes even more of a problem. And when your calorie and protein intake drops significantly, your body doesn't just burn fat, it starts to break down muscle too. This is the same issue that we run into on super low calorie diets. And I want to also just like interject this here. The difference between low calorie diets and fasting are as follows. When you fast, it triggers your body to produce counter-regulatory hormones called epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, glucagon, and human growth hormone. Human growth hormone's job in the fasted state is to protect muscle mass. Your body doesn't burn muscle when you're fasting. That is a myth, not true. I have actually put on muscle while doing therapeutic fasting because my muscle is protected, but I also lost significant amount of body fat. But when you go on a low calorie diet, you don't trigger the production of these counter regulatory hormones. So you don't have that uptick in human growth hormone, which protects your muscle mass, your metabolism downregulates. And as your body is, in that process, you can start metabolizing muscle, which is a really big deal. And studies have shown that 25 to 40% of the weight loss on GLP-1s can be lean mass. Let me say that again for the people in the back, because this is like super important. Studies show that 25 to 40% of the weight lost on GLP-1s can be lean mass. And what that includes is skeletal muscle, which is horrible. It can be connective tissue and bone density. So, as you can imagine, this is a huge problem. Losing muscle means your metabolism slows down, your strength decreases, and your ability to regulate blood sugar weakens. And losing bone mass makes you more vulnerable to fractures and osteoporosis down the road. The one of the leading issues that put people in nursing homes in old ages is that they fall and they can't get back up off the ground unassisted, or they break a hip. And both of these things are a huge part of that. So that's why, in lifestyle school, we don't focus so much on the number on the scale, although that's part of it. We focus on preserving and building lean tissue through strength training, about a protein first diet, and also making sure that we are doing a combination of feasting and fasting in such a way that's going to help preserve our lean muscle. And we have to talk about leptin. Leptin is a hormone made by our fat cells, and it tells our brain, hey, we're good on energy. You can stop eating now. But with obesity and insulin resistance, leptin signaling becomes broken and you have high levels of leptin, but your brain doesn't recognize the signal anymore. This is called leptin resistance, and it keeps people stuck in a cycle of overeating and fat storage. What GLP-1s do is they help by lowering leptin levels as fat mass decreases and, it possibly improving leptin sensitivity in the brain. But again, this only lasts as long as you're on the medication. If you haven't fixed the underlying issues, hunger is most likely going to come back, and it's going to come back roaring. And, I think this is such a big piece of the puzzle. This is something that we talk about a lot in lifestyle school. If you've listened to the podcast, if you follow me on Instagram, we talk a lot about restoring leptin sensitivity because by stabilizing blood sugar, by reducing inflammation, improving sleep, and rebalancing hormones, you can rewire your leptin. You can become leptin sensitive, and that is going to make the process of losing weight so much easier because your hunger signaling is going to be back. You're not going to feel hungry all the time because, like I've said a million times, if you feel hungry all the time, it's going to feel impossible to lose weight. It's like pushing a rock uphill, right? And so while it's great that GLP-1s do lower leptin levels, the problem is you're like marrying yourself to this drug for life because once you come off it, you're not necessarily still going to have those same results if the root of the problem isn't fixed. And I want to make this clear, drugs don't fix the root of the problems. They're kind of like a band-aid, right? And so we have to be really careful about how we use them and interact with them. And here is something that I think doesn't really get talked about when it comes to GLP-1s, but it's how they affect our brain chemistry. And, being on a health and weight loss journey, you have to really start rethinking everything about your lifestyle, how you think about yourself, how you interact with food. Your mental health and your brain chemistry is a huge part of that. And GLP-1s specifically target areas of the brain that deal with cravings and food reward, which is part of why they work so well. But those same areas also handle pleasure and motivation and emotional regulation. So, there are many people who have reported feeling emotionally flat on GLP-1s. They have less interest in socializing, or even a loss of joy. And then, some describe it as feeling like they're just kind of coasting through life. And for a lot of people, food was a way of coping with stress, coping with emotions, coping with boredom, and removing the stimulus of, that dopamine response you have when you eat a donut or a cookie, and without replacing it with a better tool can really leave people feeling disconnected and like their reward signals in their brain aren't working properly. And this is why, in lifestyle school, we try to emphasize looking at how our brain is working, regulating our nervous system, looking at our mindset, finding other healthy ways to regulate our dopamine, setting our phone down, getting rid of ultra processed food and replacing it with other things that are going to give us good dopamine increases that aren't going to spike super high and then crash, but are going to give us nice dopamine waves throughout the day so that we can feel good, that we can feel like rewarded. And because dopamine is really about the drive to do things, less about the reward. And I actually have a whole podcast episode on dopamine that you should go look up. It's probably around like episode 12. But when it comes to GLP-1s, I will say, I have heard more and more physicians talking about microdosing when it comes to utilizing the drug. And this means that they start with a much smaller dose of the medication than the pharmaceutical protocol recommends, and they increase it very slowly. And what this can do is it can help reduce side effects like nausea, fatigue, constipation. It can help preserve appetite for protein so that you can still hit protein goals. Because if you're on this drug, you have to be eating high protein to preserve muscle mass and you have to be doing strength training. It can prevent extreme calorie restriction and it gives, clients time to build lifestyle habits alongside using the drug. And honestly, I am a bigger fan of this approach versus the full-blown usage, albeit I'm always like, let's not use drugs if we don't absolutely have to. But if you are going to use a GLP-1, I would say this is a more sustainable, safer way to do it. But one thing I want to say is that if you don't figure out the root issue of what has caused you to be overweight, struggle with obesity, blood sugar dysregulation, appetite control, like from the beginning, using a GLP-1 is not going to fix your problem. You will be paying lots of money every month to have this drug for life. And then the moment you're like, okay, I no longer can afford this, or maybe it's not even working as well as it used to, maybe the dose has gotten really high and the side effects are too bad and you come off of it, your body is going to rebound bad because you have essentially crashed your metabolism if you haven't done this in a really smart way. So I want to give a really strong word of caution. And I also want to talk about what we do at Lifestyle School, because I think that I think most people don't want to use a drug unless they absolutely have to. That's my personal opinion. Others might have a different opinion. But what we do in Lifestyle School is like we don't chase weight loss. What we do is we build metabolic health from the ground up. And what that means is we work on regulating your blood sugar through strategic nutrition. We lower insulin levels with things like fasting, with carbohydrate control, the smart use of carbohydrates. We support cortisol balance through looking at stress management techniques, sleep routines, etc. And the reason why we do this is because these three hormones, insulin, cortisol, and glucose, are all the root drivers of your hunger, of your energy dysregulation and your mood dysregulation, and your inability to burn fat. If these three hormones are off, you're not going to be able to burn fat. And you just using a GLP-1 isn't going to fix the regulation of these hormones. It's going to work kind of like a Band-Aid. And when you fix your metabolism, you really fix everything else. Your hunger becomes manageable. You get rid of leptin resistance. Your hormones come into balance. You become more fertile. Your hair grows better. You have more energy. Your brain works better, and you feel energized and in control. And that is what makes weight loss last. And there's no more of this yo-yo dieting, no more feeling like a prisoner to food, to your cravings. You feel no more dependence on pharmaceuticals to feel like yourself. Really, what you're doing is building the foundation so that you can thrive, so that your body can thrive. And so I want you to know the truth, and that is if you don't address the root cause of your weight and metabolic issues, things like insulin resistance, sleep deprivation, stress, poor nutrition, emotional eating, then stopping the drug just brings all of these problems back. And I want you to get this. GLP-1s are a bridge, but if there's nothing on the other side of that bridge, if there's no muscle, no mindset work, no routine, no blood sugar balance, you fall right back to where you started, and it might even be worse than when you started off. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a customer of the pharmaceutical industry for life, but that is how these GLP-1s are set up. What you need to do is build the skills to create metabolic freedom. So to wrap up, I want to be clear. GLP-1 medications can absolutely be part of a smart, personalized weight loss strategy, but they are not the solution. They're not a magic pill. They are not a substitute for building real metabolic health. Use the time on the drug to rebuild your foundation if you do choose to use it, right? But you have to protect your muscle. You have to eat real food. You have to eat a lot of protein to preserve your muscle, and you have to train your brain. You have to learn how to regulate your stress and, do all these different things to take back control of your health, because using GLP-1 will not help you take back control of your health. Unfortunately, it would be great if there was such thing as a magic pill, but unfortunately there just isn't. So if this episode, if you thought it was insightful, if you thought it was helpful, I would love it if you'd share it with someone you love or someone considering or using a GLP-1. And if you're ready to go deeper, I would love to invite you to join us inside of Lifestyle School for Weight Loss, where I teach you everything you need to know to become strong, insulin sensitive, and free from food addictions and cravings. But I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If you could subscribe, leave a comment on this episode, share it on your social media. That will just help me get the word out about this podcast. And with that, you guys, we'll see you on the next episode.